Hello and welcome to this latest podcast on the Predictive AI World Forum. I'm your host, Malay Upadhyay, CXO at SalesChoice, and joining me today is Steven Rosen, Sales Leadership Coach at Star Results. He will be speaking to our CEO, Dr. Cindy Gordon, as they both discuss how to maximize sales performance and how you can end revenue uncertainty. Without further ado, let's turn things over to them.
Hi, Stephen. It's so delightful to have you on our podcast series. And, I was really intrigued when we had the chance to meet and hear about your new book and the sales tips that relate to sales professionals. And so I really wanted to just kind of get into your headset a little bit about, what the book's about and what are some of the special tips that you really want to highlight, especially just, during COVID-19 right now and the need to really have sniper precision focus.
Okay, well, thanks for having me. It was great speaking to you a couple of weeks back, and the book has been out for a number of years, and it always feels like it's new to me, but certainly a lot of things have changed, obviously, with COVID, and I'm going to talk a bit about that, the impact on sales and sales leadership. But I think a couple constants that I talk about, and really the book is about sharing tips that I've learned over my 20 years history in sales leadership and share them with other sales leaders. The one key thing, or two key things I think that are overriding is one, the need to be proactive in sales leadership, right? You need to be driving your business as opposed to responding. And when things change, you still need to be driving and making sure that you're leading the way as opposed to following. The other component that I find helps in life and is about, you mentioned focus and focusing on the right things. And I talk about that a number of times in different things we do. And the human brain can only focus on so many things. Maybe that's why we need artificial intelligence to help us go through large, vast amounts of data. But I believe in the number three, which is really focusing on the three key things that are going to move the needle. And sales, I guess sales is about moving the needle. Certainly it's about people, there's a people component, but as a sales leader, you need to be really focused because there's so many different things coming at you. And with COVID, the world has changed, and it's changed how we interact with our customers, how we interact with our salespeople. So it's really incumbent on the sales leader to keep the team focused and for them to stay focused.
So Steve, in the coaching practice, which you're in a real ideal spot because you've been a senior sales leader and you've had responsibility to drive the growth in a number of industries. And when it comes to what the CROs are needing the most support, or VPs of sales, what are some of their coaching concerns that they need? Is it about, keeping the team together right now? Is it about more collaboration? But are there any general themes that you're seeing that might be different, since COVID-19 came into our lives?
So we're now 3+ months into COVID. And initial concerns amongst sales managers, middle managers, and senior managers was really about finding ways to help their people transition. And the transition was, one of transitioning to technology, new ways of doing business. In times of uncertainty, people's brains go into survival mode, which really impacts their ability to be creative. So there's a lot of focus in the first few months on trying to keep a positive mindset, making people feel good about where they're at, dealing with the uncertainty, keeping them productive, and spending time on training on things that we don't normally get to. Well, we've kind of lost a quarter, and depending on what industry, some industries have been able to do their partial sales, some have not. And really the concern right now is looking at, okay, we've got a gap. We've lost 3 months. Yes, we may adjust as a company, but the real concern now is how do we make up that gap, and how do we get our people highly focused, engaged, and really driving sales and new business, which is the driver of sales, right?
Yeah, it's I don't know. Do you really think it's just 3 months, or do you think there's a longer fact in the sense that people had shored up enough of a backlog that they were going through, and it's really looking ahead to the next 6 months, where there might be a slowdown? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the reality is, depending on what country you're in, we're both in Canada, and We seem to be following more of the European model in terms of opening up. The U.S. is in a whole different thing. They've opened up, and now they're retracting and almost going back into a dormant mode where they're shutting down businesses. You know, so everyone's going to be on different business cycles. You know, we know that we're not through with COVID until there's a vaccine or a cure. So, you know, we're probably looking the rest of this year, you know, in terms of the impact it's having. So again, it depends on what industry you're in. I do a lot of work in healthcare. So, you know, some of the products are needed and people are on chronic medications. So sales continue. Where you're launching a new product, then you have a challenge, right? Because you've got to get the word out to customers. Traditional approaches may or may not work. So yes, we're in it for a longer period of time, but for those companies who are in a position where they can make up sales, they can do prospecting now, they really need to put on the switch and really get people focused on what the drivers are going to be and accelerate what they're going to do. You know, if they're delayed because of COVID, then it's still trying to set themselves up in a position where when they're able to get out there, they are driving business.
You know, one thing has been interesting. We were on a couple of calls over the last couple of days, and the conversation was about Zoom fatigue, in the sense that people were saying, you know, I had a Microsoft, you know, webinar, then I was on a GoToMeeting webinar, then I was on a Zoom, and then another Zoom, and another Zoom, and I'm really tired of, you know, having to look in the screen. My eyes are more tired. I miss, you know, the informal communication. So, you know, taking more breaks may be a reality when you're on screen so much more. It's not like you get the break to walk down to the end of the hallway. Are you seeing any, you know, one of the biggest things I'm seeing right now is the risks on mental health, you know, in this transition?
Well, you know, part of it, you know, you talk about a couple of things. One of tiredness with Zoom. You know, the nice thing is that people are going to welcome back face-to-face interactions, where sometimes salespeople had challenges getting in to see people because they felt they were too busy. So there is a potential upside down the road, but you know, it is, I think, more taxing because you're not only focused on the individual, you're focused on how you look when you're talking because you see yourself. And of course, being at the computer constantly is tough on the eyes. So without a doubt, you know, Zoom is a wonderful tool, but it is also tiring. And you know, if you think of a salesperson who may be in the car, there are breaks during the day where, you know, sales leaders now are back-to-back meetings. You know, even trying to fit in and find time to coach people. You know, everything is now scheduled hour by hour. So you're right, people do need to take breaks. You know, the mental illness component, you know, it is not Zoom related. You know, when there's uncertainty, it causes a lot of stress, negative thinking, and you know, at all levels. And we don't know, you know, some people have been put on furlough, right? They're off from work. Some people, you know, don't know if they're going to have a job going forward, especially when you're in sales and things have changed so dramatically. You know, a company that has 500 sales reps, are they going to need 500 sales reps in a new world?
Right.
You know, so there's lots of uncertainty, and of course, you know, stress as a result. So, you know, I mean, I haven't seen it with any of the folks that I coach. You know, and certainly stress is always a catalyst for mental illness, whether it be depression, anxiety. You know, I personally experienced that when I was in industry. So, you know, so stress is definitely an inducer, but, you know, hopefully people are, at least companies, and what I have found, are trying to be very conscientious of that and appeal to employees to make sure that they're okay, that we've taken more time now in our conversations to see that people are good. Whatever that means, you know, and I can think of other factors, kids being home. As much as nice to have your kids home, it's much more stressful for a working mom or working dad.
Yeah.
So,
I would just to share a quick story, and then we can go back. I know you've got a few questions of me, but we were speaking to a very senior leader at Red Hat the other day, and I thought it was just a brilliant idea. They identified, obviously their top accounts. They're sending their top accounts each a case of wine or some special bottles, and they're all going to have a drink together and toast for the July 1st, holiday, and really just celebrate, how fortunate, and just wish everybody a continued safe summer. But so I think a lot of people are being very creative in terms of how best to keep in touch, in different ways. Some companies are putting in new policies that, everybody has a call in the morning. There's scrums are going on, and really just encouraging people to dress up, even to get out of those jammies or those tracks you've worn all week.
There's been lots of. Before I ask you a couple of questions, there's been lots of creative things done by in sales teams. I'm sure in all organizations, so whether it's sales or other parts of the organization. Bring your kids to work, dress up, cocktail hour. I've run a couple mastermind groups, which I run with sales leaders. And initially there was a lot of talk about that, having regular scheduled meetings, but also trying to make it fun because we are going through change, and humor helps, fun helps. My daughter, she had a meeting that she was running. They're running Family Feud, trivia. So there are things you can do. People have been very creative and, helping employees cope with the changes or uncertainty that's going on. So tell me, like, you're in a very fascinating area to me. It's an emerging area, and a CEO of an AI company. In terms of where we might connect, where does coaching fit in your approach to helping sales professionals if they're using SalesChoice software, and how important is coaching in your software offering? I'd love to.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. When we founded the company, it was based on a very simple principle that 30% of sales professionals suffer from attention deficit disorder. The other category is CEOs. So I've been in sales and CEO, so I'm probably a prime suspect. But at the end of the day, the way we've designed the software was to really reduce their workload, kind of give them that peace of mind, give them the health of their funnel immediately scientifically. We know that in traditional sales methods with sales gates, they're mathematically flawed. There's a lot of variance. Just because you follow a sales gate process, that's linear in nature. And so if you think, we've always said, if you're from a forecast of I'm at a 50% stage on an opportunity, I can kind of look at all the hundreds or thousands of opportunities and get some kind of context. Well, obviously AI does the adjustment. So, that's one aspect. They can have peace of mind and that they're going to crush their plan or not. So that's one point. The other is giving them context of why they may win or lose. And so they can peel the onion back and sort of see, what's the pricing range that's suitable for that particular opportunity. What is, is this a positive lead channel? Is because I have this as an RFP, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, mature sales executives, we all know, if you haven't been on the inside track of an RFP, why bother responding? Yet so many companies spend the time chewing up that time on the hopes that they might win, when really their odds are so against them, they could put that time elsewhere. Since we've evolved, we've now been putting out alert notifications as well that, kind of reinforce positively that you're on the right track, or highlight, opportunities that have been in, they're stale, they've been, in no activity movement. So you can nudge insights along for sales professionals based on the workflow. And honestly, every day we listen closely to our clients, they give us feedback, and they have ideas in terms of what alerts can really spur people on. I think the other piece is that, the recognition that time is very scarce, and, we've constantly increased the span of control of sales leaders. And so the more enablement that the AEs can have to sort of hop on the plan and, get the coaching that normally they may have had from a manager, so you can redeploy that time. Usually the ROI in these solutions is honestly, it's less than 2 months, because the science can get up to levels of 85, some cases 95%. So, if you think about it, it's pretty cool.
So I mean, interestingly enough, you talk about time and deployment. As I mentioned, I do a lot of work in the healthcare area, but a lot of the SaaS companies, at least CEOs I've talked to, their managers, their frontline managers, spend a lot of time forecasting. In fact, and forecasting is a nice activity, but it doesn't drive revenue. It tries to account for revenue. So your sales managers become accountants at the end of each quarter, at the end of each month. How much more time do you think they're able to spend coaching their reps?
I think
because that is the one activity that drives performance.
Yeah, for sure. And there's an opportunity to really step back as a CRO, or now I think some people want to be called chief growth officers, and really step back and challenge the old world of scrutinizing the numbers and going over and over and over and over. When you can get to a predictability of 85%, you can take all of that time and say, you know what, I'm going to trust my AEs that when we make the final commit, they can see the risk factor of SalesChoice. I'm going to let them be accountable. So as an executive or a manager, I can put my time into individual coaching and put that time into making calls to upsell. I can help close a deal, coach, to your point, my reps. So it's going to take a generation of probably, moving out certain generation, right? The baby boomers are all close to retirement now. So that, I think, is going to make a major difference. I mean, a lot of the young people have been kind of weaned on tech guidance, right? So, they're used to Uber taking them to the right destination. They're used to finding the right music by typing in. So, guided selling with AI is going to come very naturally. They will just basically, look to the leaders to ensure that the technology is very trusted, it's responsible, and it doesn't take long for them to see when they've got accurate information on their data. They get the predictions. They don't have to chase the D's or the F's. They can just focus on the A's, and it makes sense, right? Like you're filtering the collective knowledge. Yeah, it's like the collective knowledge of the firm. Like I remember when I was at Xerox, right? If I would have had a tool like this, the collective knowledge of every sales cycle that's relevant to the opportunity type in the mix, and know when, what are my odds? I may choose to do something else that day, because immediately I can choose from my 30 or 50 or 100 possibilities, and obviously in my hottest deals, I always know my top ones, right? But it can get very you can lose focus, to your point, to use those words. And the other thing is, salespeople are notoriously attracted to the next shiny toy.
100%.
The next customer that comes in, has got, looks like there's high energy and confidence, but they haven't done enough coverage, and the time is just not realistic to be closing. So yeah, so that's I think a lot of the dynamics that are are in the way we're approaching things, Steven.
So I was fascinated. I was on your website, and I was reading about ending revenue uncertainty.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that. What does that mean? What's the impact? I mean, I talked about uncertainty and stress. I'm sure it creates a lot of stress, but what other impacts, and how do you help companies sort of end that end of month uncertainty or end of quarter uncertainty? Forced discounting as people try to make their numbers at the end of a quarter?
Yeah, well, I think it boils down to that we've built a very advanced simulator, that any scenario you want to know, that we're going to give you an outlook, whether it's in the next week or the next month or the next quarter or the next quarter beyond or the year or 2 years out. So the science can determine what your odds are based on historical patterns and the data that it can see. And again, this is not for a small business, right? Our solutions are primed for larger mid-market companies and larger enterprises. So when you think about ending revenue uncertainty, it's just knowing you can wake up in the morning, know the health of your pipe, get a predictive score that's incredibly accurate, and go back and have a snooze, or go down and visit a customer. So it's all about the science married with the art, and that's not to say that the art, because if the data is not in there, right, which is the other factor, right, the science, will make some mistakes. So, if the amount we've invested in CRM infrastructure, and now if you want to get into the AI game, data has to be accurate, it has to be complete. So we've built that layer in as well. So,
Okay.
you have to believe in facts and statistics. And, once those engines are moving, you can basically keep adding on other AI components and other models and get your whole company running on an AI highway. We're talking about sales, but what we've been experiencing and seeing other modernized companies, they're getting ready for everything to run on an AI highway.
It's so amazing. And would this be sort of the next phase after big data is learning from the data and incorporating that into the corporate thinking?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the biggest issues we have is with our board of directors and our CEOs and our C-suite. We definitely need to be trained on AI, understand the different use cases, understand the different methods, understand which approach would be more optimal, understand the risks that might be in the methods, and be able to ask the questions. So there's a massive need for retraining. I mean, the US put out their declaration for AI to really motivate all US companies to really advance and accelerate on all fronts, right? That came out in February. China has declared that they're going to be the most dominant player in AI and everything by 2030, right? Canada, we've done a great deal here in our country, as you know, with the research institutes. So you cannot step back. You cannot. It's like almost if you recall, when we had the B2C moving to electronic commerce, and the questions: do we need an e-commerce enablement? And the debates that were going on. Will that we drive volume, online presence? Well, we don't talk about that anymore. And so the discussion that we're having on AI is going to happen with the innovators that are lead in the stories, and then you'll still have the same dynamic of the laggard. But this is one situation that you can leapfrog, because when you think about it, if I can cherry pick the best of the best that are coming in my funnel, and maybe in another competitor's funnel, they also are mining the best of the best. But who gets to them from a time perspective, you have an advantage because you're filtering up what are the best pathways to drive the optimal outcome, right?
So just for my own knowledge, and I'm sure some of the listeners, if you look at the technology adoption curve, AI in sales, because that's what we're specifically talking about, where are we at in that curve?
On the adoption curve, I think if you're on a global basis, sales is in sort of it's past the infancy stage, and it's probably moving up into the top of the curve. Marketing is obviously well past it because they've been using some of these approaches longer. And obviously it's going to vary by industry segment as well, right? So, but I think the Gartner group is showing that, we're at the, we're not in the trough of disillusionment. We're still moving up,
Okay, interesting. Yeah. And so SalesChoice has been researching and building out real-time psychographic profiling. Can you share what this does and why it's a game changer in the selling world?
Well, as you know, in sales, we've had different methods to evaluate personalities, right? And there's all these online tests and that may be completed to say, do I have the right profile to be a sales professional? Can I handle rejection, right? Which is a very important skill attribution, right? And so what psychographic profiling does is it's based on natural language, which is from linguistics. So, and the linguistics is basically the vocabulary that you use in your communication. So what we've done is we've connected to the IBM Watson platform, which has a very rich, set of open source NLP libraries. But then we created our own overlay in the solution selling world. As you know, we index people into, are they amiable? Are they expressive? Are they analytical? And so the science figures this all out in real time. So how that impacts sales professionals, it can impact my account coverage, right? We all have been in cycles in large accounts, and then, Steve, if you left the account, the impact it could have to the turnover risk in that account, because people, they often fall in love with, the culture and the people, and they especially if you've been in an account for 20 years. So, not spending the time to transition really effectively, having the right profile in, maybe the customer being engaged. So the science figures out all of that, plus it can actually guide you on how to communicate differently. And so, obviously we train people on this, but the science can guide you in real time, saying, you know what, you've given John these 10 accounts, you may want to think about giving them to Sally. She's more expressive, or, reverse it, give them over to Charlie because he's a high analytic, he's covering off these types of accounts, engineering, accounting firms, for example. Now, some of these things you might think are logical, but the reality is that in any culture, they're going to have a mix of personas, right?
Of course.
Just because I'm a CFO doesn't mean that I'm going to be analytic for sure, but what is my other dominant trait? Maybe I am a highly amiable person, so I really enjoy, some warming up before you plunge in, to the details, right? And another personality may be totally the opposite, and you've absolutely lost them in the first 5 minutes.
Gotcha. Is there an application there for coaching salespeople based on their psychographic profiles to help them, get better at what they're doing, or is it more trying to move them to where their strengths are?
That's a really good point. I don't think we have clear answers on our side on that. I think most companies, today, if it's an obvious detractor, they might make the choice to change the coverage. In other cases, that individual may have a real dream to sell into a particular vertical. So in many ways, we should give them the coaching and the enablement. I think that that's probably the next step in the evolution too of our software. The first step is get the data, get it connected so you can classify, build a user experience around that, which we've now done. Then obviously you got to think through alerting management on the findings. And then you're talking about it could be a coaching, real-time coaching, or it could, with even a chat bot, you could actually build probably an AI chat bot that would take over that role, and you're moving more into robotic process automation. But it's definitely a journey. I don't think the role of a voice-to-voice coach will ever go away. But I do think that, when there are certain I'd call it highly routine attributions that you can see that, are very solid scientifically, then, the science will, naturally push those things away. Although I must admit, emotional intelligence in technology is getting a lot smarter right now, right? So I've got a few questions of you though, Steve, before we wrap today. One of them is obviously, we're living in this incredible age of distraction right now that's full of ambiguity, it's full of change. What do you think is really important to build the leaders that have the energy, the resilience, the agility? Like, what are some of the skills that you think are absolutely imperative, over, not just because of COVID, but as you outlook for the next sort of 5 years of career development? What would you things that tell people to focus on?
I've given that a lot of thought. We have a program called the Sales Leadership Blueprint, and it focuses on 3 areas because 3 is my favorite number, and I think people can only focus on 3 areas. But if we look at it, leadership is critical, and part of leadership is understanding your people. It's creating the right environment where people are going to succeed, and it's also coaching.
Right.
The other component is culture, and the top sales organizations have a culture, not a coacher, but a culture of accountability, which is really about ensuring people commit to things and do what they say they're going to do. It's about hiring the right people, because the impact of bad hiring decisions is really impactful in an organization. And it's having what I call cadence or regular scheduled meetings. So you're not micromanaging. I used to have a boss who I could describe as, we'd plant a seed and every day he would dig it up to see why it's not growing. And that's a sign of a micromanager. So it's okay for sales managers or sales leaders to be periodically checking in, but creating that cadence where people know that once a month we're going to have a discussion, once a quarter, and so on and so forth. But the overriding problem, and we've kind of touched upon in several components of our discussion today, is unless you're focused, there's too many distractions going on. So it comes back to some real basics of making sure you have control of your time. You're not spending it on things that are not going to move the needle. I mean, there's lots of distractions. You talk about, I don't know, 30%, I think, of, what was it, salespeople or CEOs that have ADD, and I always joked about myself having functional ADD, but we all get distracted. There's so many distractions. So being able to control your calendar, having the right mindset to win, because we can get knocked around, things change. Organizations, there's politics going on. So as a leader, if you're not in the right mindset to lead your people and help them be in the right mindset, the battle's lost. And the last one is you've got to be good at moving stuff off your plate, so you can focus your time on culture and leadership as opposed to minutia. And I think we all spend far too much time on minutia, whether that be emails, texts, I don't want to use the word stupid meetings, but some meetings are stupid, or time wasters. And it's really about those who are going to figure out how they can spend their time on the critical areas of building the right culture, leading their team, are the ones who are going to win going forward. And COVID is a perfect example. If you get bogged down in all the things you can't do, as opposed to what can we do, those people who figure out what they can do are going to be much more successful than the people who are bogged down. So to me, leaders, like everyone else, it's not, some of it's art, but some of it's having a framework for success. And to me, that is the framework over, I guess, almost 30 years now of work as a sales leader and working with sales leaders that I've learned is critical for success. And it's not just today, it's into tomorrow.
So Steve, just in terms of your experience with coaching, so many levels, do the ones that that have been coached, do they stand out? Are they the ones that are learning leaders? I'm curious about their profiles. Are they ones that come to you that are in trouble? Are they ones that come to you that they really want to get to the next level and it's self-motivationally driven because they know the value of a coach? But are there any trends that you're seeing with your clientele that offer insights of who does seek coaching and who doesn't?
That's a great question, and I'm not to say that I'm very particular, but I'm very particular on who I coach, because I can't fix people, right? And traditionally, not to, going back 10 years, people who were, the company was like, okay, we're going to give you one last chance. We'll get you a coach to help you navigate in this environment, help you communicate, help you be a better leader. Well, you know what? I can't fix people, but I can help people get better who want to get better. And the people actually who are more open to coaching tend to be very bright, but sometimes, sometimes when you're so bright, you miss certain components. So helping them become more self-aware. But it's really helping people who want to move to the next level, who have the potential. And the challenge is, in many cases, their boss or doesn't have the time to get their true potential. So they're looking for other ways that they want coaching. They have high potential. So I work with folks who have high potential, who want to learn, who want to get better, and who are open to trying new things. And fixing people, I'm not a psychologist. I'm about performance through people and helping people, because some of it's through mentorship, because I've been through many things that they're going through, but it's also about helping them become better at self-evaluating, because I'm only there with them. Sometimes people want to speak every week, but most of the cases once a month. So they got to be self-reflective and hopefully maybe sometimes have the little Steve Rosen speaking in their ear. What would you do now? So they're asking themselves the same questions I ask them when they're in different situations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was curious about how you would respond, because some of the Korn Ferry research reports that have come out on building the strongest leaders. Their top skill, number one, is reflection and renewal. And that we live in times of incredible distraction. We're into many dynamics, all moving. Maybe we're into co-opetition, so you have to really be aware of context. Takes on a very significant role. So I'd like to close with, Steve, where does art and science come into play in building stronger sales teams, and what happens if there's an imbalance
between art and science?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I also am involved with psychometric profiling, and there's some science that goes into that. People say leadership is an art. Some people say it's an inherent thing, but it can be learned. I'm not sure if I look at it that way, but I look at it as, to be a strong leader and to build a strong team requires lots of discipline. And I think in sales in particular, where marketing is much more of a discipline, you will follow how to build a brand plan. Large consumer goods packaging companies, pharmaceuticals have very good processes in place. And then on the sales leadership side, well, there isn't great processes in place. So, some of the science is actually having strong process to help people do things in a more effective way. The art component I look at is understanding people, understanding what motivates them, understanding why they wake up every day, understanding which are the right people to build your team. So I guess it is a combination. If there's an imbalance that, hey, your leader is very much about the art and the people and doesn't have process, well, the business is going to suffer. If on the other hand, the leader is all about process and doesn't connect with the people or engage them or get the best out of them, your business is going to suffer as well. So
Right.
you got to have a combination of strong discipline. So you stay focused on what's important, because one of the biggest issues I really believe that both of us are very much aligned is there's too many silver shiny fish out there that we get distracted, whether it be in the moment, the day, on what's important. So I guess when there's an imbalance, usually what happens is you're having performance issues and trying to figure out what those are. Is it the leader? Is it lack of process? Because sometimes those are dichotomies where, strong people, people don't necessarily become strong process people. And I'm not a process person, but I've realized as a consultant how important process becomes. I'm not sure if that's what you call science, but to me, sales management is really lacking in process. And they're not very complicated, the processes, but the discipline to follow through on them is where some of the challenges, and it comes back to focus.
Yeah, maybe just to build in terms of how I might look at art and science and sales.
So tell me this, how does that apply to AI?
So I think I would look at it from the perspective of the art is sort of the raw DNA of the human, and I'm going to put the science into the data and the analytics and AI. And we have come through 3 generations of sales, since World War II, on sort of CRM evolutions, right, of technology. I do think there can be a lot of process in sales, but where we've maybe not connected the dots is ensuring we spend the time so that the rigor in the process and the inspection and the discipline is followed. So that's kind of, one side of the coin, and obviously the emotional intelligence plays out all the time in being able to command attention to do a pitch and engage a customer so that you can move them along and they can feel that it's their story, that, it's their narrative versus your narrative, right? On the AI side, AI I look at is just a very friendly little coach that is, grabbing all of the data, insights and breadcrumbs that are out there and kind of collecting all those gems mashing it up with some very powerful algorithms, because we know the win rates of each individual if they've been there, and so you know always in a forecast who you can count on, because they always bring it home, right? So the science will figure that out pretty quickly and adjust the predictions, not just based on the win rate, but also then all the other dynamics that are going on. And as this technology gets more sophisticated in the market, it's just not SalesChoice, it's just in the market, it will adjust for seasonality. It will adjust, in the sense if your coverage shifts, and John, who's, your top, coverage, or the top lawyer who was helping to negotiate your contract, and he moves out, some of these things the science can know real time if the data is visible anywhere in the World Wide Web. It also can protect you in the sense of maybe a particular account that you're pursuing that actually has fraudulent activities. If you think about it, we don't always peer into all the company's history on a global basis, but so we're going to see a lot of I call it the patterns. Eventually, will all be in massive databases on risks, and we'll be able to all kind of connect and jam into our account coverage. We're a long ways away from that, but that's where the science will get deeper, because it's all about facts and codifying facts. And that's why in some ways there's movements to more open data platforms and thinking. That I don't believe that chief sales officers or growth officers will make the cut without a deeper understanding of advanced analytics, tighter KPIs, tighter precision, and most importantly, recognizing data as a strategic asset, because it's actually now more powerful than a lot of your customer base and what you sell. So many companies have to kind of think through the wealth creation that they have, and they could have, if they really looked at their data and evolved it as a revenue enabler, because that becomes something you can measure your assets against. I don't think all executives are totally clued into that yet.
Well, I mean, it's fascinating. I can't say I used it how many years ago, 17 years ago when I was in industry, but I'm certainly fascinated by the potential to, to be able to use your data to make better decisions, to understand where your business is at, so you can focus on the people, on the key processes that are going to drive your business. So in some ways, it's like having an analytics department who works solely for you, but churns out what you need.
Yeah, that's a great way to end our podcast today, Steve. Thank you so much for joining our series where we're profiling sales leaders that are making a difference, and just really appreciate your time with us with our Predictive World series. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great speaking with you.